Good afternoon everyone, myself Aamena Rangwala. Today I am going to present about why comparative Indian literature by Sisir Kumar Das. So first, what is comparative literature? Comparative literature is interconnected with each other like time period, language, genes and boundaries. It provides a geographical chronicle and a broader perspective on literary and cultural achievement of humankind, and it is possible from within the single literature alone, and comparative literature provides the reader a serious, sustained understanding of culture beyond their own and helps to become a better global citizen. So comparative literature is a very broader concept. One can connect other countries' literature or other cultural literatures within the one in comparative literature. So these are the key arguments taken from the article. So next is Das stated that the Indian literature of literary studies is still fragmented into the smaller linguistic units, such as we know. The reason is multilinguality and multi-religious or multicultural nation where are extremely limited. In India, we have multiculture. Multiculture means there are very many different types of culture. There are very different types of languages, and there are many religions. For translation, first we need to translate the language text into English and then have to compare both the texts. But Aurobindo has failed in forming the framework to study the Indian literature. To study Indian literature by linking with comparative literature, still needed to indicate the proper framework within which Indian literature can be studied. Das tries to tell that to study the Indian comparative literature, one has to study the framework, means one has to go in the depth and investigate and then has to study the comparative literature. The term comparative literature is not self-explanatory or not only to define the term, but it is defined to be the necessity of quantifier, means there is not a certain type of concept which is not limited. We have to investigate in deep what is there and how it began. It should not be limited to the areas, it should be wide. Does mark that we must try to find out exact nature of relation between comparative literature and Indian comparative literature, and also try to see it as a express necessity to study the relation between comparative framework. Thus tries to tell that we have to see the comparative literature as well as to see the Indian comparative literature. He finds the difference between these two. These are the goals to visualize the total activities of man as a single universe. The main dilemma of comparison is to recall his idea of literature as a single universe or world, but it is abilities to study in totality. But Das points out the comparison between comparative literature and world literature, that it should not be to the limited areas. It has to ability to that investigate in the deeper way. Then Goethe spoke about the Welsh literature in 1827. He is the first man to speak about the world literature, and he said in the conversation with Eric Mann on 31st January 1827. Western comparists have kept himself, so both Rabindranath Tagore and Goethe is Das is denying the concept of Rabindranath Tagore and Goethe. Das tells that the comparison is the method of investigation by Goethe, while Goethe says it's the body of valuable literary work. Then the Western comparist kept himself restricted to Western literary and the contact between West and East began during the time when they read the Hebrew literature, and then they came to know about the Christian literature, and they slowly and steadily started accepting that. And the court of Cordova in Spain is a center for Arabic literature, and in 18th century they European discovered the Sanskrit language, which was the revolution for linguistics. And Franz Joss admits that about the Western criticism, criticize the Western criticism, and at last the result is that comparative literature is in the West began as comparative Western literature, and still is even the same in today's time. Then Westin expressed his hesitation to exchange the study of parallel phenomena, pretending the in this Das tries admits that the ecocentrism means the view of historic or cultural non-Western society which accepts the perspective of European and Western perspective. He tells that the charge again Eurocentrism against the Western comparison is unfair, and that is the choice of European literature, and the main area of investigation has to be caused more by Pelagianism and then by assumption. He tries to tell that one has to focus on the main thing, not on the assumption and not on only the speculation. One has to go deep in it, and then has to search deeply about the things, not only has to see the upper layer, what is visible. Then Ulrich Westman expresses hesitation towards this, and he says that the academic justification of excluding Oriental literature from comparative literatures comes from the necessity to avoid. He tells to exclude that only speculation is not important, but he tells to exclude that speculation is not important, but one has to go in the depth and see. So he's trying to deny. And then last, but we have to compare our literature consists the study of Indian literature that must be as well as a comparative literature. And here are the difference between comparative Western literature and comparative Indian literature. Comparative Western literature means the study of different national languages, while comparative Indian literature is one nation or one national literature written in many languages. Comparative Indian literature means we have many different types of languages like Assami, Marathi, Gujarati. There are many types of language. So first the scholars have to translate the different types of languages into English, and then they have to compare. Thank you.
Hello friends, I Divya Sheta. Today I am dealing with the article Why Comparative Indian Literature by Sisir Kumar Das. So, while studying comparative Indian literature, the question what does is raised that are Indian English writings a part of Indian literature, or what will criterion language or nationality? So, in a comparative Indian literature, so what are the criterion? As we know that India is multilingual nation or a multicultural nation, so, is that language or nationality can be put in the criterion of uh, studying comparative Indian literature? So, comparative literature has to be both intralinguistic and interlinguistic. So, comparative literature, we can study that in one language or multiple language also. So, for example, British literature and American literature, this both literature and culture has different culture, but both used one language, that English, while different national literature, but used one English language. Same as in India, we used Bengali and Hindi. So it is we can consider that we can study that what Bengali literature or Hindi literature is there. and one language can be the medium of two literature. So same is the example of British literature and American literature. So in both English language is the medium to present the different culture or different literature. So in further, Sisir Kumar present that what in comparative literature that concern is that in the nation or the oneness of language in the particular nation, the it is the problem is there. The change of change there is changes on political and linguistic scene. So the political and linguistic scene are continuously changed throughout the time. So it is a problematic thing. So again, Das states that the validity of comparative Indian literature can be argued from two directions. That one must have a terra firma. So in Indian literature, there must have a solid ground or a plain ground to plant something new culture. And we in India, Gujarat, we can plant something Gujarati culture in Gujarati language, or in Maharashtra, Assami, Marathi. So there are various kind of terra firma or solid grounds are available in India that we can study. We can study different culture through through in through India. So it is literature born of language, and yet it goes beyond language. So that's again state that one cannot stay in the particular language. But what the scholars or student of comparative literature, they can go, they must to go beyond language. And language is nourished by culture. So language so in India, obviously the article is state that comparative Indian literature. So time and again we discussed with the reference of Indian literature. So in India, various cultures, various languages are there in India. So a culture, language is nourished by culture. So it is the culture which gives the new kind of meanings, or the environment in which people live in different culture, so through the language. But the problem is that the language is different. So we need to see the one language, that translation is come. So its relation with that culture. So Indian literature is very much connected with culture. And it is again that in classical language, in the writer who wrote in their native language, or further they can also speak in other language. But so this switching between one language to other language is also there. Then thus give the example that in Goa there is Konkani language is there, while Portuguese language is also there. So thus state that in Western literature or in comparative literature, one cannot stay or one cannot study with only one English literature alone. But we can also see that we can also find out in depth with other language also. So in Goa, the native while Portuguese people want to relate with Konkani literature, they can relate or in on the people of Portuguese. They have some kind of impact, because in Goa there is also Konkani language is there. So whatever is written in Konkani language in Goa, for Portuguese people, they can easily impact with, or they can easily interact with that Cockney language or the culture also, because they stay there. So this kind of different language or multiple languages is here in India. So people can easily interact with culture and the environment in which people live. So Amia Dev said that comparison is right reason for us, because one is that multilinguality. So Indian scholars are here thus state that Indian scholars uh, are not are not keep this multilingual aspect as at the center, but multilingualism is also gives us to study the differentiation of culture, and again that we Amya Devi said that we are third world. So third world because there is some certain kind of psychological restrictions are there. So, while talking about multilingualism, so there kind of something. If we just general thing talk about Indian writing sorry, comparative Indian literature. So there is something nationalist thing is there, or patriotistic thing is there. So question is that will not the study of Indian literature alone breed a kind of literary patriotism or critical parochialism which must be avoided. So it can the question is there. So multilingualism is a fact of Indian society. So time in there is from the history of till the modern time, we can say that multilingual literary activity is increased in India. So, like Mani Parvala is kind of that mixture of something that might be mixture of Sanskrit or Tamil language is there, and that Mani Parvala is something new. It is new increasing in Malayalam language, in which there is Tamil language and Sanskrit language are used. So this multilingualism, we can use two language to to born or to create the other new language like Malayalam language. So new language and literature like Urdu. So at the end of the article, Das states that in our idea of comparative literature will emerge only when we take into account the historical situation in which we are placed. So again, that culture is very much connected with comparative Indian literature, or language is also connected. So our journey is not from comparative literature to comparative Indian literature, but that's state that comparative Indian literature to put in comparative literature, not in comparative Western literature. Though comparative Western literature is coined in Western society, but coined from Western society, but the very core idea of comparative literature is that whatever that Western or Indian, there should be that compare it only one literature. There is only comparative literature. So thank you.